Rich, now it's time to talk about garden design.
Okay, Shauna, and this format of garden design that we're going to be talking about is actually tall to short design, because on this show we talk about a lot of different themes and ways to design your garden, but tall to short or short to tall is just another way to do it.
It is. Here's a super cool idea, because I have herbs right here. This can be any size of plant, from a 7-foot plant down to a very small plant, or just in a smaller plant shape. And here what we have is the tallest plant, the middle plant, and the short little plant.
So if you're talking about container design, this would be the thriller, the filler, and the spiller.
There you go.
And the thriller starts in the middle. The filler is the ring around that, and the spiller goes around the edge that spills over the edge of the container. So just remember that when you go to the garden center: thriller, filler, and spiller.
Easy.
And
Easy to remember.
Short to tall.
It is short to tall. And the advantages are obviously that, you know, if you planted the smaller plant and the back, you wouldn't be able to see it.
You would not, and that would not be fun. If you want to have a good time, you want to see the plants that you plant.
There you have it. Now listen, one of the things that I've learned about short to tall is that you can plant it in a row, like all of these lined up in a row, or you can plant it in a circle. So you can have small plants on the far outside of the circle, the shorter, medium-sized plants around the middle, and then the tallest one in the center.
It's aesthetically pleasing to do it either way, because you get to see them both.
It's true.
So what you're going to want to do when you go to your local garden center, you definitely want to talk to a local independent garden center. Talk to somebody that is an expert, and you're going to read the tag. There's some tips to reading the tags. These tags are actually produced to go nationwide.
I have a tag for you right there.
And this is typically what it's going to look like. If you're watching online, you're going to be able to see a picture of the tag. But on the back of the tag, some of the information that's always going to be on there is sunlight requirements, water requirements, and typically the height and width of the plant. Now, this is, if you're watching, this is actually an herb tag. And, you know, when it comes to garden plants, you know, vegetables and herbs, typically you're more full sun. However, Shauna's going to talk about the leafy greens that you can actually grow a lot of veggies in the shade. Now, when it comes to your landscape plants, like your trees and shrubs, that's where, you know, the sun comes into play in a big way. But when you're getting back to the subject of what we're talking about, short to tall or tall to short, it can actually affect how much sunlight a plant is getting.
It can, because the taller ones can block out the shorter ones. There's no denying that. The other thing is though, generally speaking, I plant in the garden, all the same types of plants that require the same amount of sun. And the reason for that is if you plant a shady plant in a sunny bed, you're going to have a burnt out plant. Right? Yeah. So you do have to consider your tall plants, but generally speaking, make sure that they're close in what their requirements are. This planting technique works with shade gardens as well as full sun gardens. It's really any garden whatsoever.
In the northern states, a lot of times there's, say a plant says it's going to get 4 to 6 feet tall. It's actually going to be more on that 4 foot, because it's got a shorter growing season, longer winter, longer dormancy period.
Less sun.
And so that 4 to 6 feet, they're trying to cover that range. So that's just a really good tip. Sometimes people say, I thought that plant was only going to get 4 foot, and it ended up being 6 foot, and it crowded out my, you know, prize azaleas that grandmother had, you know, given me the clippings, and now I'm really depressed and I'm not having a good time with my garden. So these are some tips.
That's horrible. And that's the wonderful tips when you're talking about our short growing season, particularly. Northern Indiana, Chicagoland. Boy, I think I had 3 months last year.
It was a very short and extreme one, but you know what? That's the extremes of the Midwest.
That's it, people. You need to read your tags and try planning the tall to short planting design and see what happens for you this season. We're going to be back shortly with our next segment, and we're going to learn more about green.
Troy Martin coming up next after a break and a message from our sponsors. Hi, Rich from Alsop Home and Nursery in St. John here to remind you to think outside the box store and shop at your locally owned Best of the Northwest Indiana Region Garden Center.
Alsop Home and Nursery, the best of every season. In Frankfurt on LaGrange Road and St. John on Route 41. See their weekly circular at allsipnursery.com.